Night fell again. The days on the planet didn't seem very long. They only managed to cover a couple miles every day before night came around again. Tark felt the pains of the wound on his back, thinking it would be a good idea to dress it, but knew he wouldn't be able to reach it enough to treat it properly. So, he sat up straight, holding onto his legs to keep himself up. He didn't want to lean back since it would only aggravate his wound. He hoped his friend the tiger would come back, having enjoyed the company of the friendly beast last night. Though if not, he guessed he couldn't blame the tiger. It probably had better things to do. After all, he was nothing more than a slave out at night in front of a dying fire, waiting for morning to come so his masters could throw him back into their work. Hopefully not literally again. Instead of being greeted by the sight of the tiger coming closer to him again, he was introduced to a howl, one that pierced the sky with its strength, echoing across the mountain ridge. The air chilled around him as another howl went off, this one from a different direction. 3 more howls went off. 5 wolves out on the prowl. Now, Tark really wished his animal friend was here to protect him. He soon saw the shapes of the wolves coming into view from the moonlight. One, at the very front, looked to have a coat of pure silver, shining in the faded light similar to the tiger the night before. The next one, falling behind the silver leader, was one of a similarly light color, though towered over the others. Visible scars were scattered across its body, proving it to be a fighter. There were 2 more trailing behind them, the 5th having not made itself known to him. He looked around for a place to hide, finding nothing besides the tent, but he didn't dare go in there while Akar and Jakan were sleeping. The wolves slowly got closer to him, though none of them were growling at him. They seemed to only be casually strolling over to him. Eventually, the silver one lifted its front legs. Tark watched in amazement as the wolf slowly began transforming. There, standing where the wolf once did, was a grizzled man with silver hair pulled back into a ponytail and a very unkempt beard. His clothes were nothing more than animal skins dyed to match his hair color. He looked at Tark with interest, one eyebrow raised as he got closer and took a deep breath through the nose. He then nodded. Well, you are an interesting fellow, aren't you? He said with a smile. Tark wasn't sure how to answer, still in a bit of shock from the wolf turning into a man. Oh, where are my manners? I am Athar. I am Athair, the alpha of the pack, he said, offering a hand. Tark shook his hand, still not entirely sure what was going on. My name is Tark, he said simply, his voice a little hoarse from lack of use. Well, it is nice to meet you, Tark. This is my son, Phoenix II, named after his grandfather, he said, motioning to the big wolf, who now converted into a man, towering over his father and looking to have the strength to smash Athair without trying. He had his arms crossed across his chest, scars marking all along any part of his skin that was exposed to the elements. He wore similar hides to his father, though his were blonde colored to match his own hair. He only nodded to Tarek, staying silent, not looking like he was in the happiest of moods at the moment. "Might I ask, how did you get this far?" Athar asked him, sitting down next to Tarek, looking over at the young boy. The man seemed nice enough, but at the moment he had a slight air of seriousness about him, wanting to get down to the reason why he came. To be honest, Akar and Jakan don't know where they're going. They've just been following a lead and their instincts, which have gotten us lost this far," he said with a shrug. "What do you mean by this far?" Well, What do you mean by this far? Well, most people that come here don't just start heading in the right direction off the bat. Nor do Armus tigers come by and snuggle up against people at random, Athar said, with a small laugh. Nor do we come up and talk to people who come around these parts, he said, looking back at Tarek. You, Tarek, are special. You have a scent about you that makes you similar to us, he explained. That's why the tiger didn't go and kill you, and why we stopped and chatted with you. Tarek looked at Athar as if he were drunk. You mean there is something special about me? A slave to a duo of idiots? He asked him, trying to make sure that Athar didn't have him mixed with someone else. The fact the tiger didn't attack you should be proof enough. People and creatures who have been given gifts have a special scent. The tiger is one of them, same with me and my people, and the same with you. Your scent overpowers all of ours by tenfold, though, which I find interesting. So might I ask, are there any unique abilities that you possess? He asked, obviously looking quite curiously at Tarek. No, I don't have anything different about me. Where do we get the scent? He asked, trying to figure out what he was talking about. Athar took a deep breath and thought for a moment. The night was surprisingly silent besides their light breathing and the rustling of the wind. Tarek waited for him to speak, but was soon startled by the sound of a rock falling not too far away. He couldn't see far enough out to tell what caused it, but Athar shrugged it off before explaining. That is my daughter. She wanted to stay back and watch. She's probably just trying to get a better view. Now, as for your question, I will not be able to answer that. I feel like you'll be getting what you deserve soon enough. Same with those two bozos. He motioned over towards the tent. Just follow them. They've been leading you the right way so far, so the gate wants you to find it. You'll know you're still heading the right way when you start seeing statues of wolves and tigers, he said, gesturing off into the direction that they had been heading. That really doesn't answer my question, Tarek said. His shoulders fell in disappointment, wanting to understand more, though he winced when the movement pulled on the large scab on his back from that morning, remembering he still hadn't dressed it. I know it doesn't doesn't make any sense, but stuff will make more sense soon. As for the second part of business we came here for. He motioned for one of the guys in the back to come forward. Tarek looked him up and down and realized that this man's outfit was something similar to old doctor's robes, only they were a light brown, making it hard to make out any details on the outfit in the moonlight. The guy knelt down next to him and pulled out a couple different medical supplies out of his pockets. "All right, Tarek, I need you to lay on your stomach. I'm going to take care of your wound," he said in a calm and reassuring voice. Tarek nodded before shifting around so he was laying with his back to the sky and his arms resting under his chin. "All right, Tarek. I'm going to cut open part of your shirt in order to get better access to the wound," he said, waiting for Tarek's acknowledgement of what he said. Tarek nodded, closing his eyes as he listened to a blade go through the fabric of his suit. The other three remained quiet as the doctor worked, feeling the man use some kind of cloth and liquid to clean the wound. Eventually, he felt some kind of paste that the man rubbed into his back. "So, might I ask, you obviously aren't completely human, so what are you?" Tarek asked in curiosity, wondering what to call their species. "We are a type of human that has the power to change not only into a wolf, but also a werewolf if we choose." Athar began explaining. "Our ancestors well over a millennia ago came here and were given the gift, so instead of human, we are known as the Venandi," he explained. "So you can turn into werewolves too?" "Yes, we're stronger and faster as werewolves, but have the issue of anger management, as well as savage instinct problems," he said with a bit of a laugh. "Yeah, we don't use that form much unless we are at war, which we haven't been ever since we became the last pack on this planet," he added in. Tarek nodded, which he found a little difficult due to the fact that the area around his wound was now completely numb from the salve. "I'm going to stitch this back up now, so then it shouldn't get any worse," the doctor said before Tarek nodded. He felt something moving his skin around, but he couldn't feel the pain of the needle entering and exiting his skin. After a moment of stitching, the man put some medication on the wound before adding in, "I'm going to sew back up your suit so then it doesn't look like anything happened," he said before Tarek could feel the suit being pulled back as it was fixed up. "Looks good as new," Athair said with a smile. "Those idiots shouldn't even notice what happened," he said, looking over at the tent with disdain. "I do wish we could do something to get rid of those two ourselves. But if they are the ones leading you the right way, then we'll leave them be for now," he said before shaking his head. "All right. Is there anything you'd like us to get you before we leave?" he asked, the kind smile returning. There was a lot on Tarek's mind right now, though he wasn't sure if he had any good questions to ask. Though, he soon heard his own stomach rumbling. Athair couldn't help but grin, knowing that the young boy was in the mood for something to eat. "Well, we can get you something to eat if you want. One of the villages isn't too far from here, and we can get you something from there," he said, looking over at the others. "Shall we?" he asked them all. "Sounds good to me," said the man that stitched up Tarek's wound, his friend nodding with a smile. Phoenix, on the other hand, barely made any acknowledgement of his dad's question, still not looking happy about anything that was going on. "All right, let's go," he said before shifting into his wolf form again and running down the gentle slope of the mountainside. The other soon followed him, leaving Tark to stir over what he had been told. Though he soon remembered he wasn't alone. The fifth wolf was still there, watching him. The alpha's daughter. He turned around, trying to look for the shape of a wolf, but couldn't see anything. "Are you still there?" he called out to her, wondering if she would be willing to keep him company. Soon, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement. A wolf much smaller than the others came up to him. She had very dark brown fur and chocolate brown eyes from what Tar could tell in the moonlight. He smiled at her and she gave him a grin as well, though in her wolf form it looked more like a snarl. "Hi," he said, not really sure what else would be a good way to start a conversation with her. She tilted her head before changing into her human form. "Is that really how you start talking to a girl?" she asked. She looked to be about his age, having dark brown hair that went down to her shoulders. She wore a dress that matched her hair color just like everyone else was. The dress had a band made of leather that was tied around her waist. It didn't look like she had any shoes on either, her feet a bit dirty but otherwise unmarked. Her facial expression was impartial, making Tark a bit uncomfortable but went along with it. "Well, I haven't really talked to many people at all," he said with a shrug and a sad smile. "So I really wouldn't know anything about how to act around girls," he said, looking at her as she went over to him and sat down next to him. "Huh. Well, at least you know how to not act like a jerk. There are plenty of guys that would have just been rude to me," she said with a shrug, looking around where they were, not saying anything else. Tark waited a little bit, not sure if she was going to say anything more, so he decided to bring up a new topic. "So why do you all wear the same color as your hair?" he asked, wanting to understand the Venandi a little better. The young girl looked down at her dress, as if making sure that it really was the color of her hair. "Well, if you notice, our clothes shift with us when we change into our wolf form. So, having clothes with a similar color to our hair helps when we shift. Otherwise, we may still have parts of your clothes that are there when we shift, or our coats change color," she said with a shrug. "It's really unpredictable when it's not our hair color, so we usually keep it as close as we can," she said, looking at him now, as if studying his face. "What about you? Is there any reason why you're wearing that?" she asked, talking about his spacesuit. "Oh, this is a requirement when riding in space shuttles, though it's the only thing that I have to wear, so that's why I have it on now," he explained, though he did realize that his suit now wasn't legal to go on the shuttles with the tear in it, even if it was crudely put back together. He looked at her and realized she was really confused now. "Space shuttles?" she asked. "We don't have any fancy tech stuff. We're pretty darn rudimentary," she said with a shrug. "Oh," he said, having not realized that they were not as advanced in technology, though he should have guessed due to the fur and hide clothing they had. "Well, it's a way for a bunch of people to travel across the galaxy a lot faster than most ships that people own." Her head cocked to the side, interested. "So you travel through the galaxy?" "Well, I've been to a lot of different planets through the galaxy, so I guess you could say that," he said with a smile. Hmm, that sounds really cool. Are other planets different from this one? Oh, yes. I was once on a planet that was nothing but a giant desert. There was another that was completely covered in ocean. And so the people that lived there stayed in buildings with stilts or stayed in ships riding along the ocean, he said, remembering some of the more interesting planets he had gone to. Wow, as much as those two are jerks, they have taken you to some pretty interesting places, she pointed out. I would like to visit new places. Staying on the same planet sounds boring compared to seeing the galaxy, she said, leaning back so she could look up at the sky. I want to see that kind of stuff, she said, studying the stars now. Well, it would be nice if you actually get to do stuff, I guess, he said with a smile. I hope you do get to go out and see the galaxy someday. He looked up at the sky as well, seeing the multitude of stars in the sky. There were worlds and suns without number in their view. Yet, it was only a small portion of the glory that was really out there. Yeah, I hope you get away from your captors sooner or later. Bit annoying that my dad won't just take them out and take you to the gate. But I guess he has some sort of reason. Somewhere in his head. She snorted, knowing her dad had a problem with actually giving reasons for what he did. Oh well, I've dealt with them for years now. I can deal with them for longer, he said with a shrug, though he didn't sound very confident. Jacan and Akar would be furious if they couldn't find the gate. That or they didn't get paid, since they never made a contract with that shady professor. The girl gave him a comforting smile. Well, how about this? If after you visit the gate, nothing happens, I'll get a group together to get you away from these idiots. No matter what my dad says, she said, looking over at him. Tark nodded, looking over as he heard a howl and the patter of paws hitting the ground. He could see the group of wolves coming back soon enough. Athair shifted towards them, a smile on his face as he pulled a package out of his pocket and tossed it to Tarek. Tarek caught it and found it to be made of some kind of parchment. He almost burned himself with whatever was inside of it, dropping it into his lap. He opened it to find long shreds of steak and melted cheese, along with some herbs, and a small loaf of bread cut in half. He picked it up carefully as to not burn himself. He smiled up at Athair and nodded his thanks as he bit into what he had been given. His eyes lit up as he began devouring it at a speed that even surprised the Venandi around him. He finished the food within seconds of tasting it. After all, it was the best thing he had ever had in his life. He used the parchment to wipe his hands and face off, a little embarrassed when he saw their expressions. Sorry, it was really good, and I couldn't help myself. I don't get to eat a lot, he said. Athair merely smiled and began laughing. If I didn't know better, I would have thought you were a Venandi with an eating style like that, he said. His laughter was loud and kind-hearted, fatherly even. Though everyone froze when they heard Akar talking about a strange artifact on some random planet that came to his unconscious mind. Everyone was stationary for the moment, until they were sure that Akar was still asleep. They all looked back over at Tarek, Athair smiling at him. Well, I think it would be best for us to take our leave. We will see you again soon, Tark, he said, with a bow before shifting and running off with the other three right behind him. Uther's daughter was still sitting next to Tark, though, waiting for her dad to get out of earshot before saying, I'll try and convince him to help release you. If I tried to do it now, I don't think he would be too happy, she said with a slightly sad expression. It was nice to meet you, Tarek, she said, a smile coming onto her face soon after. It was nice to meet you too, he said, before adding, I didn't get your name. What is it? He asked, wanting to know the girl he had been chatting it with. She grinned at him, showing her white teeth with what he noticed to be extended canines. My name is Ash. He smiled before saying, I like that name. It was nice to meet you, Ash, he said with a wave as she got up and began walking the way her father went. She waved back before shifting and running after the other pack members. Hey, why can't we, rescue him? Ash asked her dad once she caught up. Athair slowed down, thinking a moment before answering. It's not time yet. For whatever reason, I've been told not to, he said, looking a little worried but also interested as to what would happen. Ash looked at him with an odd expression. Who told you that? He sighed. It's not a who, but it's the only thing I take commands from, he said, before ending the conversation there and continued running back with the pack.